Good morning. That was kind of fascinating for me, too. I know we were all like, what's happening? We're very excited this morning because for the first time, we are doing the Autism Live show from our new studio. So you're going to see this change and morph a little bit, but we're very excited that we are officially in our new digs. And I'm Shannon Penrod, by the way, and very excited to be here with you this morning. Please forgive our dust. You guys have been staying with us the whole time. Good morning to Connie and to Susie. So thrilled that you guys are here. The chat is open. We're live right now. It is Wednesday, the 10th of August, and there's a lot of reasons why I'm excited that it's the 10th of August, which we're going to talk about in just a second. And I'm extra excited to be here today, not just because we're in the new studio, because that's fun but weird, can I say? Be patient with me, because it's all a little weird to me. It's like riding a bicycle, but I forgot where there's a whole book called Who Moved My Cheese? My cheese is everywhere now. There's new cheese that's 3 years later. Not 3 years, that's exaggerating. 2.5 years later since we've been in the studio to do this. Good morning, Laurie. But thrilled to be here. I do want to get some business out of the way, first of all, to let you know that we are live. We're live right now on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and a dozen other sites. You like the new haircut, Laurie? Did it myself in the bathroom last night, just shaved off the back. It's like a reverse mullet. But thank you. Beauty at its best. We're flying without my glasses today too. So my vanity glasses that hide my puffy circles. And I have extra puffy circles today because I was up later than I intended to be last night, and I'll tell you why in a second. But anyway, it's all good. And today's topic is all good, and oddly enough, the two things go together. But we are excited to be here live, as I said, on Facebook, on YouTube, and Twitter. We hope that you're watching and interacting. We're also live on about a dozen other sites, and our fabulous Traven, who has been working himself silly, and we don't say thank you enough to him, is going to show you eventually some of the different ways that you can be watching the show, some of the different ways that you can be connecting. But if you're watching live, you can be interacting right now. Liliana, good morning from Riverside. We're so thrilled to have you here with us this morning. So, and for those of you who aren't able to watch us live, and I know you tune in, you go, well, I don't get to watch it live. I will tell you that that's most of you. Most of you aren't able to watch it live. We appreciate that. We are available as a podcast. You can download us wherever you get your podcasts. In fact, we're the #1 rated autism podcast worldwide. So that's thanks to you guys, because you like us, you share us, you talk about us, you review us on iTunes. That helps. And Laurie said, thank you, Traven. And we thank you for saying thank you to him, because he's pretty awesome and we couldn't do this without him. Don't even get me started. We couldn't do this without him. Let me just say for a moment that when it was 2.5 years ago, and even before everything went down on shutdown, Traven and I had our ears to the ground, and we were already sort of concerned. I won't say panicked, but we were concerned, and we were concerned about the fact that we felt that people were going to need us more, not less, if we went into shutdown. And let's just remember that we all thought that shutdown was going to last 2 weeks, right? But Traven and I put our heads together and we said, okay, well, if things happen in the United States like they happen in Italy, what would we do? Would we just stop doing production? And neither one of us could stomach that. So weeks before lockdown, Traven and I would go home early and try to see if we could go live from our respective homes. And I am so proud of the fact that by the time we were in lockdown, we had already been doing our shows from home for a week. So we were live from home before Jimmy Kimmel. We were live from home before any of those people that did their big shows and had 1 million people working on it. And that's because of Traven. Let us not mince words. That was because of Traven. And we've made it work from home for all this time, and then we made it work from the office for a little while, and now he's making it work from the office, so Traven is fabulous. So absolutely. And thank you, and she respelled his name. So we appreciate all of you for appreciating Traven, and I certainly appreciate Traven. So anyway, so we hope that you're watching us in podcasts. We hope that you're watching us live whenever you can. And we appreciate your patience because we don't have all the people that Jimmy Kimmel has working for him. Gina and I saying Traven's having to do this pretty much on his own. So pretty remarkable. Woot, woot. Yes, absolutely. Amen. So that's Traven, and that's us in the studio. So why do I have extra bags underneath my eyes, you might be wondering. It's because today is August 10th, which meant that at midnight last night, this morning, that midnight today, yesterday, I don't know how, midnight always confuses me. Which day is it a part of? I know what 12:01 is, but at midnight, which day is it? In any case, Netflix dropped last night at midnight the final season, season 3 of Lock and Key. So exciting. And not only do we love the show, and thank you, Netflix, for putting out this great show that's super fun. I would say it's a little bit like Scooby-Doo, but high-tech Scooby-Doo, really fun, and that you can really watch it with your kids. There are a couple of scenes that you're gonna have to see with, depending on how old and how scared they get, because there's some spooky, scary parts to it, right? But I hear from a lot of families that they're able to watch almost all of it with their kids because it's funny and it's Scooby-Doo kind of thing. It's those darn kids, right? But fascinating, and a fascinating way of looking at the world, right? So, oh, that was fun, Traven. So in any case, they dropped season 4, and those are all the ways he's putting on the screen right now, telling you ways that you can be watching the show. They dropped Lock and Key, and it is amazing because since the beginning we've been watching, and our very own Kobe Bird. You've seen Kobe Bird on the show before. You've seen him do red carpets for us when he was significantly younger. He's very near and dear to us. There he is. Oof, that smoochy face. We just love him so much. He's an actor on the spectrum, and first we saw him on Speechless. Well, first we saw him doing live theater stuff, right? And loved him, and he was on the show talking about that. Then we saw him on Speechless, then we saw him on The Good Doctor, and then we saw him on Lock and Key, season 1, and we loved it, right? It was so exciting. And I really think that Kobe has changed the landscape for actors because I think it's so much more mainstream now as a result of what he has done over and over and over again. It's sort of commonplace now for actually autistic actors to be playing characters of people who are neurodiverse, right? So it was so exciting to see him season 1 as Rufus in Lock and Key, and then we were excited for season 2. He was again Rufus. His storyline was not as prevalent in season 2. And then recently we got word, they had already filmed season 3, but we didn't know, but they released that he had been made one of the principal cast. So last night, and we were so excited about that because to me, that means he's gonna be in more episodes. That's what that his character has a much bigger arc in season 3. That's what I presume, right? So last night, I just needed to go to bed so much earlier last night than midnight, and I was like, I'm not gonna stay awake. I'm just gonna have to watch it on Wednesday night. And I couldn't stand waiting. I just couldn't bear it. I needed to watch. So my family and we talked about it, and we're like, well, let's just stay up and watch the credits so that we can see Kobe in the opening credits. Because that's a big deal, you guys. That there are only a couple of people whose names go in the opening thing and not at the end. That's a very big deal. And for a member of our family, and I mean your family and my family, right, to be in those opening credits because they're principal cast, hello, that's a huge, huge deal for all of us, but especially for Kobe. I'm gonna get verklempt here. It's a big deal, you guys. And so we sat there and we were all like, like this, because big day yesterday, big day today for everybody in my family. And then the credits rolled, and there it was. There was his name, big ol' in the opening credits. And it was so much fun because we all screamed and cheered. And we were like, yes, right? It was so much fun. And I had said, we're just gonna watch the opening credits, then we're gonna go to bed. And I was like, well, let's just watch the first few minutes. And then we saw the first scene with Kobe, and he is sublime. He is sublime, you guys. He's so good. I can't even tell you. Watch. You gotta watch, right? But then we were like, all right, let's just watch for one more scene. We'll watch a few more minutes. And then eventually I had to be the one to say, no, I have a show in the morning. We gotta call this. So I'm so excited. I'm leaving work early today so my family can sit and binge a couple of episodes. We're not gonna get through all of it. But I gotta get through more of it as soon as possible because I cannot wait. Anyway, he's fabulous. and he is representing on behalf of all of us. So do yourselves a favor, look at that twitchy face. And he is one of the nicest, kindest, sweetest, most genuine people on the face of the planet. But then you'll see him, he's just a compelling, interesting, thinking, listening actor. And I get to say that. There are a lot of things that I say on this show about, I'm not an expert in this, I'm not an expert in that. But my master's degree is in theater. I can talk about actors. I have permission. I have some level of expertise to talk about this. This young man is a star. This young man is a superstar. And of course, there it is on the screen for you to see as well for yourself. So watch Lock and Key. It's out now. We're going to be talking about it a lot this coming week because it's all that's going to take up my disk space. So you might be asking, well, okay, Shannon, so what does this have to do with today's topic? Well, completely unrelated. It's a topic that we've been asked to talk about it for a while. It's a topic that I've been asked to talk about for a while, and that is theater and autism. How do theater and autism go together? And it's like, oh, let me count the ways, right? So we have a parent-to-parent talk for you today. Where I'm going to talk to you about some of the benefits that I know, but you should also know that a great deal of research has been, just in the last few years, people have been doing research on using theater as a tool for people who are on the spectrum to see, is it helpful? Does it in any way help with different skill building or with anxiety? We're going to talk about all of that. And I want you to know that the studies are coming back showing that, guess what? This is the duh heard around the world from me, but guess what? It does have a positive impact. Now, you might ask yourself, well, what led people to look into that and da-da-da-da-da? Because, I mean, when we talk about who are some of the most recognizable faces that are people, adults that are on the spectrum, and what kinds of things are they saying? We always say that let's go to the source and let's hear what they have to say about it. And Dr. Temple Grandin has been saying since she started speaking that theater was one of the things that genuinely helped her when she was a kid, a teen, and a young adult. That her mom was very involved in high-level community theater, and that Temple played a role, and I don't mean that literally, I mean it figuratively, in the things that they were doing, that her mom would bring her to the theater, and some days she'd be painting sets. And other days, they would have her be somebody like a townsperson or whatever, and she'd play a small role. But that she says all the time, oh my goodness, it taught me about working together as a team. It taught me about how to pace yourself. So many different skills, and we're going to talk about that. But one of the other people that we've featured before on the show that's moving and shaking, and a person who's actually autistic and speaks on a regular basis, Dr. Kerry Magro. And we've had Kerry Magro on the show since before he was a doctor. Like we had him I think we had him on when he first had just graduated from college, before graduate school, before the doctor thing. And he has said to us all along, and even most recently when we had him on the show, he said, oh, theater was really helpful to me. Helped me to be able to speak. It helped me to feel like I fit in. A bunch of different things. So we're not just picking things out of thin air. We over the years, we've heard from people on the spectrum. This has been very beneficial to me. And so I love that people are starting to do the studies on it, because that's when you get funding for it, right? So that's really exciting. So let's go ahead and take a look at, I've got a little presentation for you called Theater and ASD. And I don't know where, do I need to click the button? There it is, there it is. I love nothing better than some red seats in a theater. This is my home, right? This is where my background is in theater. First, I studied theater. I got my master's degree in theater. I participated in theater, was an actress, was a director, and then became a college professor teaching theater and acting. So this is my home. This is what the letters after my name, when I bother to put them there, are actually about. So I feel very comfortable in this arena talking about this. Am I an expert on autism in theater? I would tell you no. except that I do know a little bit about it, right? Because I've spent the last how many years in the arena of autism and interviewing people and participating, and sometimes participating in theater and autism. And I know a thing or three about theater. So let's start by talking about, just in general, the things that we're going to talk about. Then I'm going to get really specific about each one of these. So I think that theater is a great way to build positive skills for anyone. For anyone. Whenever somebody comes to me and says, oh, my kiddo this or my kiddo that, I got to tell you, one of the first places that I recommend is that something to do in the theater. And believe me, there's a lot of things to do in the theater. It's not all being center stage and being the person that the spotlight is on, right? In fact, the reason why I got into theater, you ready for this? Somebody recommended it to my mother because why? Because I was painfully shy. I know that shocks you because I can talk my face off, but I'm still shy. You'd never know it in a public setting because I know what I need to do so that I can accomplish what I need to accomplish in those settings and not have the shyness hold me back. I'm not changing who I am. I'm not being different. But I know when I'm in a setting and I need to accomplish something, I know I'm the person who will walk up to somebody else at a party that I don't know and say, hi, I'm Shannon, who are you? And in a polite way, not who are you. So anyway, here are some things that we can work on with anybody, including people who are on the autism spectrum. But by the way, we're hearing from people on the spectrum that it's really effective working on these things with them, and there are some reasons why. So social skills, perspective taking, empathy, problem solving, reducing anxiety, communicating clearly, body language, and confidence/self-esteem. So love this. And I love that Miss Brenda Lee Gertman, actorsforautism.org, has put that on there. There are many organizations that work on these kinds of things because they're so much fun. Let's say that first, and they're so effective. So fabulous. Let's move on here to social skills. Let's talk specifically, like what kinds of things are you learning? And I want to say that there are many different arenas within theater. So, it could be that we're taking a class on improv, right? Or it could be that we're working on a theater production in a community theater setting. I mean, there's so many different ways but in all of these ways, when you're working on theater, the very basis of theater is that there has to be some turn taking. The thing that you learn in theater is there's no I. There's no I. It is a collaborative art. Even if you are doing a one-man show, and I've done one-woman shows, it's collaborative. It's really hard to, be the person who is performing and sell the tickets and run the lights and run the sound and all of that stuff. In fact, it's pretty impossible, right? I don't know anybody that can do that. It's a collaborative art, and there is turn taking. Even if you could do the entire thing by yourself, there's a live audience, and they get a turn too. If you say something that's funny and the audience is laughing, you gotta ride that laughter and know when to come back in. Otherwise, you interrupt them. It is a conversation. So turn taking cannot be understated. Understanding that it isn't always my turn is a really important way of being able to communicate with people around you in a way that's happy for you and for them. Now, could a world survive where we don't take turns in conversation? It absolutely can. But what happens is when you override people, believe me, because I interrupt people all the time, and then I have to go, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm used to talking into a camera by myself for an hour. And people go, oh, people don't want to be around me when I'm like that. Because everybody wants to be able to have a turn, right? And when you do this, there's a million ways that you can work on turn taking, right? But if what you really want to do is convey to the person turn taking is a benefit to you, then you want to do it in a hands-on way. That's fun. Is there anything more hands-on and fun than theater? I don't think so, but that's my opinion on it. Okay, so how about effective scripting? Now I know some people are gonna lose their minds at me and go, oh, you know, all you're doing is teaching people to mask. Really? I'm not sure about that at all. Because the analogy that I always give is that when you're teaching somebody how to dance, let's say we're gonna teach somebody how to samba. We don't just throw on the music and go do it, right? I mean, I guess there are some people who can do that, but for those of us who have 2 left feet, who still want a samba, that's not gonna work for us, right? We have to have somebody slow it down and show us the steps. And it's awkward in the beginning because it's like, oh, I put this foot here. Oh, now I got to do that one. And you work on it slowly and then you add the music to it, right? But you work up to the point where you get to the fun part where you get to samba. And even then, it's like you're having to think it through. It's almost like when you learn how to drive, you're thinking through every part of it. You know, we could say, well, that's masking. You're pretending that you're sambing, but you're taking on a skill. You're learning how to do it. It's not quite your own yet, but a day comes if you continue to practice and do the samba, a day comes when it's yours and you feel the music and you move and you're sambaing and you're enjoying it. And you're not thinking about what the teacher said, you're listening to the music. And I think that all learning goes through those phases, right? So one of the things that we've talked about is that, I'm still emotional from talking about Kobe. One of the things that we've learned is that if you go to, for instance, here I was shy, and I would go someplace, I'd be on the playground with other kids, and I didn't know what to say. It's not that I didn't want to say something, I didn't know what to say. And you know what theater taught me? That I could memorize a phrase that I could say that would help me to be effective. Later on, I learned, oh, when you go to a party, you know, there are phrases that you can learn to ask, questions that you can ask other people that help them to open up and talk to you so that then you don't have to feel shy anymore, right? Or there are phrases that I can memorize for how to talk about myself. Do you know that when I first found out that my son had autism, I realized, oh, I need to come up with like an elevator pitch of when people say to me, you know, oh, your child's been diagnosed with autism, what does that mean? I was like, oh, I don't know what to say when they say that. I would clam all up. And so what you learn in theater is you don't always have to know the answer, right? But you can rehearse an answer. You can script something out and say, here's the perfect example. You know how when somebody says something to you and you answer and you kind of gobbledygook it and later on you go, I wished I'd said this. I wished I'd said that. And you wish, oh, that would have been the perfect thing if I'd had time to think it through. Why am I not quick on my feet? Well, what theater teaches you is that you can think ahead. Well, if somebody asks me this, what would I say? You script it out, you rehearse it, and then you practice saying it. And the first time you say it, it might feel like, oh, well, that's scripted. It's not really, you know, me in the moment, but it's what I wanted to say, but it feels a little funny. But you work on it and you rehearse, right? And then one day you say it and it feels like it genuinely came from you, that it's genuinely what you want to say. So this is what I mean. We know that people on the spectrum script. We know that they will repeat something and repeat something and repeat something. And it used to be that people just said, oh, that's a stem. And then people started to wake up and smell the coffee and go, I think that is this individual communicating something with me. I'm just not receiving. And that is equally my responsibility. And we began to realize that, yes, in fact, that is it. They're communicating. It just isn't always effective. So in theater, we're teaching people how to script effectively, how to plan what you'd like to say, rehearse it over and over and over again until eventually it is yours. It's not teaching someone what to think or how to feel. It's teaching them how, that sometimes in the moment, some of us, myself included, although I'm not on the spectrum, right? But we have difficulty in the moment figuring out what we want to say, and that there's a way around that. You can script things and practice. And by the way, the more you do this, the more obviously, I don't script out this whole show and what I'm going to say to you. Right? But I can remember the first time I took a class in extemporaneous speech in college, and my teacher said, Shannon, I don't know that you're ever going to be good at this. And look what I do for a living now. There we are. Because, you know, I just kept doing it. I just kept doing it. So I already said that working as a group and figuring out how to do things as a team, so vital. And being able to disagree with someone and still find common ground so that we can all do the play together. I love that there is a sense of camaraderie in the theater, that we can all disagree and we go through production meetings and rehearsals and we're not really sure and we don't have it. But when the curtain goes up, if you ever want to see a team sport, theater. Because everyone, from the person who does the makeup to the person who will turn the lights out at night and everybody in between, works together as a team to make sure that that story gets told when the audience is there. Really, really great team building skills. And then how about the idea of an internal monologue? This is something we talk about in theater all the time, that someone might be sitting there on stage and they don't have lines, but there's still stuff going on inside them. They're listening, they're reacting, and they have an internal monologue that's going on inside them. So when we start to talk with young actors about this, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be the actor, it could be, but everybody is aware of this, that every character that is on stage has an internal monologue. And I was talking to a friend who's on the spectrum, and they were like, oh, when somebody first explained the idea of an internal monologue, I was like, really? I mean, I know I have one, but you mean other people do? And we're going to talk about why that's important in a second, because that's perspective taking, right? But it allows them to try on other things too. So if my internal monologue for today, not necessarily in theater, my internal monologue is, ugh, I hate everyone. Why is everyone in my way? Why is traffic so bad, right? We all have those kinds of days. That is going to make me feel a certain way, and it's going to make me behave a certain way. But if I change my inner monologue, because I'm pretending to be someone else in a play, and my internal monologue is, I'm happy, and I love everyone, and I'm so excited to be here, it changes how I feel. It is so much fun when you show this to a young person, and they go, oh, that's interesting. How I think changes how I behave, changes how I feel. It's a very, very powerful lesson. But it also teaches, too, that everything that we're thinking, we don't always say. We don't. And that everything that the person across from you that say what they're thinking, they don't always say. That's very exciting. So let's move on to our next slide, because we're talking about perspective taking. Perspective taking is the ability to recognize what I'm thinking and feeling is different from what the person across from me is thinking and feeling. And it allows me to look at things in a different way. It allows me to allow that person to have an opinion that's different than mine. It allows me to think of how what they do, actions that they take have an impact on me, and actions I take have an impact on them. So what theater does is gives us hands-on experience at perspective taking. And you know what's super fun about it is that it pulls us out of ourselves. Because I think when we talk about this, and I'm talking about me and you're talking about you and what our perspectives are, it's so personal. It can get very personal, and sometimes people's feelings get hurt very, very quickly. But instead, let's say we're doing a play about Winnie the Pooh, and I'm playing Winnie the Pooh, and you're playing Rabbit, right? We can talk about, well, what's it like for Pooh? Well, Pooh's perspective is, I want to eat honey, right? That is what I want. That's where I'm coming from. If you're taking a long time talking about something, all I really want to know is, when are we going to have honey? That's my perspective. Well, is that the same perspective as Rabbit? It's not. And we can not only talk about it, but we can have fun playing with that. That's hands-on experience. That's like getting your fingers in the mud and dealing with perspective taking. It's super fun. Again, some of these points, it's just, I'm gonna be hammering them home because they're so effective. You're collaborating. You're working together. Because if I'm playing the Winnie the Pooh, and what I need to do is look for the honey, and you're playing Rabbit, and what you want to do is be, I've played Rabbit before. Rabbit wants to be in control. Just giving it all away here. Rabbit wants to be in control. Well, if I, as an actor on stage, am playing Rabbit and Winnie the Pooh is got a honey jar stuck in his nose and he's blocking the exit and I want to be in control, I got to collaborate with the actor on how we're going to play this out, right? I can't just decide I win and I plow through Winnie to leave the stage. I have to collaborate with the director and the cast and the lighting people and the sound people. And just when we're acting and doing whatever and the sound people say, please hold, right? I gotta be able to hold because we're working together. And it's fun working together because we get to put on other people. Super duper duper fun. And it teaches me patience. Teaches us all patience. That turn-taking thing, sometimes it's about me, sometimes it's about you, sometimes it's about the sound guy, sometimes it's about the lighting woman, sometimes it's about the stage manager, right? And so I have to be patient in the times that it's not about me. And then I get to feel what it's like when it is about me and the patience that other people give me. Super fabulous stuff there. Okay, moving on. Our next slide, empathy. Okay, I want to say this, that it totally cheeses me off when people say that folks on the autism spectrum don't have empathy, because I know that to be false. Those are fighting words to me. People on the spectrum have empathy. They already do, but sometimes what happens where people read it that the folks on the spectrum don't have empathy is when the person on the spectrum doesn't understand the input that everybody else does. So perhaps somebody falls and hurts themselves and they're crying, and the person on the spectrum isn't paying any attention to it, isn't concerned about it, is going back to do whatever that they were doing, and people go, don't you even care? And when you say that to somebody on the spectrum, they go, well, of course I care, I'm not a doctor, I can't fix that, right? So they're just reading the input wrong. But what theater and theater games and participating in theater teach us, again through this perspective taking, is that everybody has motives, everybody has things that they want, everybody has a backstory. That there are things that, you know, what you learn in theater is that the villain shows up and the villain does something, and it's very easy to go, well, the villain is bad, right? But any good acting coach will teach you that the villain isn't coming from a place of wanting to be bad. The villain has had things happen in their past that have made them believe that this is the only way that they can get what they want, right? So that we begin to look at people as fully fleshed out beings that have a backstory, that sometimes have a motive, sometimes the motive is good, sometimes the motive is bad, and it allows us, because empathy, true empathy, is not just sympathy, it's having an understanding that you are going through something that's difficult for you, right? That's what true empathy is. Empathy, and being caring about that and acknowledging that you're going through something. So in that respect, theater helps people on the spectrum to understand the context sometimes of things that are going on. I will frequently see people on the autism spectrum say, I see that you are upset, and so I know that when you are upset, you will feel better if I ask you, is there anything I can do? And they will say to me, because that's not what I would want. If I'm upset, I want you to leave me alone. But I know for you, what you want is for me to say, is there anything I can do for you? And that will make you feel like I care. And what I want for you is to feel like I care. It's a very interesting way of looking at it. And Parker wants to know, would sports work as well? There are great programs like Challenge League and Miracle League that are great. Absolutely, Parker, and maybe another time we'll talk about sports. Sports have the potential to do this as well because it's a team thing and it's collaborative and it teaches you a lot of different things that we're talking about here. I would say to you the difference with sports is sports already requires you to very quickly pick up a skill in order to do something, and the goal is literally a goal. It's so clearly defined. In soccer, it's that you got to get that ball in the net. And if you don't, you lost, right? And so there's a lot of win-lose stuff that happens in sports. And in team sports, I find that some people are not good at being accepting of other people on the team. Now, the leagues that you've mentioned, great, because it's not about winning. But I find that it's very hard for people that are on the spectrum when they transition to a team with neurotypical people, because neurotypical people get very caught up in the we must win. And here's what I like about theater. Winning is not clearly defined. So if you do the show and the curtain comes down, you won, right? It may not have been the best show, right? And it might have been a great show for one person and not, the sound person messed up a cue. And they're like, it wasn't my best show, but it wasn't a failure. You know what I'm saying? And I think what's fun about that is that everybody wins. Everybody wins. But sports, good. Sports, really good. And if you're with the right group of people, absolutely. Okay, so let's move on to problem solving, which again, great for sports too. So the thing with theater is the mission is clear. I just talked about this. We're going to do this together. We're going to do it in front of an audience. The audience is going to come at this time, and then they're going to leave. And the mission is clear. The show goes on no matter what, right? And if that means that we got to change something at the last minute, then we're all working together as a team. And you will see when people are clear about what the mission is, oh my gosh, I honestly, I've directed everything from, first graders up through senior citizens, right? And everybody gets this message. And the first graders get it so well, because you rehearse, so they're ready. And if something goes wrong, it's always interesting to me, because when I'm teaching young people, anyone, I go, we're not going to plan on nothing going wrong. We're going to plan for things going wrong. And some of the fun is how we deal with it when something goes wrong. Listen to actors sit around and talk, and they'll go, oh, remember when those are the glory stories about this happened, and this is how we overcame the problem. They romanticize it. Obviously, you don't want for problems to happen, but they will in live theater. It's just part of the animal. And So everybody on the team has that expectation that we're going to work together to solve the problem. And again, I can't say enough about rehearsing. For people who don't have a theater background, rehearsing seems silly to them. Seems like a time suck, it's a waste of time. It actually isn't. And if we applied the techniques that we use in rehearsal to our entire lives, we would have a better time. We would enjoy our day more. It's the reason why we rehearse fire drills, right? It's the reason why every time you get on a plane, they go through the thing and they show you what the exits are, and they kind of rehearse it in your mind, because when stuff happens in the real world, there are so many things that are going on in your brain, but your brain will default to the thing that your body remembers how to do. So people do line up to go out in a fire drill. And when horrible things happen on a plane, people remember, oh, I got to put the mask on, because it's been rehearsed over and over and over. It's a really great technique to be able to do anything, especially in stressful situations. So it's about overcoming challenges and the ability to try new things. When you rehearse, it's every time it's an opportunity to try something a little different. We don't just rehearse and go, okay, we're going to do it exactly the same way. That's not what theater is about. It's about trying something a little bit different here and a little bit there. It's why every single theater performance is a little bit different, right? Because we're never going to be doing the same thing over and over and over again. Even if the cast is the same, the audience is different, and they're going to laugh in different places. So it's always a little bit different, and it's that excitement of, okay, I'm finding something new here. And I love that Miss Brenda Lee said, in an education setting, my son had difficulties with contact sports. I think that that's a valid issue, that, it's physical and it can be really difficult. Parker says, how about handling rejection? Not everyone gets a role. That is something I would love to hear your perspective on. Absolutely. Here's what I love about good theater, especially if we're talking about educational theater, is that, you know, we get to rehearse the success, right? But we also get to rehearse our relationship to all the things that are going to happen in our life. So it's like a microcosm of the world, right? That there's auditions and you have the opportunity to put yourself out there, and you might get a leading role, or you might not get a role at all, or you might be somebody who's standing in the back in the chorus, right? And you get to have your feelings about that. And believe me, I've been around so many years and seen so many casting lists come out, and people are bummed because they didn't get the lead role, right? But then they rehearse, and everybody becomes part of the family, and everybody learns their part, and they get to feel what it feels like to be a part of the whole. And that is invaluable. Even the person who has the smallest, tiniest role feels like I was part of this success, and it's why there's a curtain call, because then everybody gets some applause. And it truly, that collaborative art about it heals some of the wounds of I didn't get to be the lead. And maybe if I work on my things and for the next audition, maybe I'll get the next role, right? But I think that there is an element of rejection in theater, but there is also this wonderful, wonderful thing that in educational theater, everybody has an opportunity to be included. Even if you didn't get a role, like there's a way that you can participate in community theater and things like that. Now that's not true when you get to Broadway. You audition for the role in Broadway and you didn't get in, and you don't get to be a part of the whole, right? That's much further along. And for people who want to pursue it professionally, like for instance, Kobe Bird, they learn how to, the statistics that, you know, you're going to audition for 100 things and you might get called back for 2, and you're lucky if you get hired for 1. That's a very specific thing. But just for an educational standpoint for theater, it should be very inclusive. We've seen for years, I just saw this morning that they're going to do the Golden Globes again on NBC after saying that they weren't, because they weren't diverse enough. And you know, people talk about, you know, they watch the Oscars and they're like, there needs to be more diversity. There was this year. But what's fascinating to me is go watch the Tony Awards. You want to see diversity, you want to see inclusion. They've been doing it for decades, maybe even a century. They get better at it all the time, but you really want to see voices that are not, you know, and people will say, oh, there's a lot of old white men in theater writing and directing and producing. Sure, there are, but there are a lot of people that aren't old white men writing. And you know, there's some good old white men writing. Let's not, you know, throw everybody out, but there's diversity in theater. There's inclusion in theater. It's built into the art. Okay, so it helps with problem solving. So if you've got a kiddo who gets frustrated and doesn't know what to do and gets frozen when they're having difficulty with problem solving, oh my gosh, put them in a theater class with improv. They'll get to experience that and get through it to the other side and go, oh, this isn't so hard. Okay, let's talk about anxiety. Because I think that schools are maybe, I don't know if they're even better than they were when I was a kid, but when I was a kid, nobody talked about your feelings or about your breathing or, you know, being mindful. That wasn't happening in the schools. And kids were having panic attacks then too. And there were kids who would massively, massively stress out, and there wasn't much support for them at all. And one of the things that I learned in junior high was you go into the theater class, and that's the only place where they're teaching you how to use your breath to help control your anxiety. It didn't even occur to me before I went into a theater class in junior high that that was a thing. Nobody had talked to me about that. Now, you know, we have programs where we talk about that with preschoolers. And we put the stuffed animal on their belly and we tell them, try to make the stuffed animal rise slowly and go down slowly. And we start to help them to understand that your breath helps you to control your feelings. Theater does this out of necessity, because being on stage can be very anxiety-ridden, right? So for centuries, actors have had to work on maintaining their states and keeping themselves calm so that they can be in that problem-solving mode, so that they can access the full use of their bodies and their voices. So I don't know any theater experience where there isn't some element of a warm-up or some discussion of this about centering yourself, about helping to keep yourself calm even when things are very anxiety-ridden, about teaching you and rehearsing how to be able to focus for longer and longer and longer periods of time. You know, any theater performance that you ever see where somebody is doing, you know, a whole big thing, they don't just walk in and rehearse the whole big thing. It's like running a marathon. They don't go, okay, I'm going to teach you how to run a marathon. Let's go run a marathon. That's not how they do it in any realm, right? They say, okay, today we're going to run a half a mile, and tomorrow we're going to run a half a mile, and in a week we're going to run a mile. And then we're going to run a mile and a half, and then we're going to run 3 miles, and then we're going to work our way up to doing the whole thing. It's the same thing in theater, where they'll rehearse a chunk and then rehearse another chunk and put it together to realize that we're not overwhelming ourselves, that we're working towards something, we're flexing a muscle, making it stronger, and that we can focus for longer periods of time. And then, of course, theater is all about mindfulness and about the mind-body connection, so that, because your instrument is your body, right? And but it's not just for the actors. When I think about the crew that works, they're all talking about mindfulness and about, you know, I've worked with so many costume designers who will design this beautiful, beautiful costume, but then it doesn't fit right on the actor, or it doesn't work for the quick change. And so they have to be mindful of the mission and what the experience is for the actor, and they go back and they go, all right, we're gonna make this part so that it rips away, or we're gonna make this part a little bit bigger or a little bit smoother, because we wanna be mindful of the whole experience. And make it possible for everybody to be successful. I super love that about the theater. See, I'm going to leave here and going to need to go do theater. How about communicating clearly? One of the things that we see with individuals who are on the autism spectrum is that if you came to language late, then you did not get the gratification that comes from being able to request something when you were younger. Like maybe the child was saying, you know, some version of cookie, but you weren't hearing it as the parent or the caregiver, and so you didn't give the cookie to the individual. So it's like something got broken there. What's supposed to happen is they say some approximation of cookie, and then they get it, and their brain goes, oh, I'm gonna say that more often because then I get what I want, right? But that isn't working for a lot of individuals who are young on the autism spectrum. And so they don't put the effort into it about being able to say cookie clearly, because I didn't get it. I didn't get it when I said it, and I thought I said it clearly, and so I'm not going to put more time and effort into that. And so a lot of times, not only are we working on communication with kiddos on the spectrum, but we're also working on having the oral motor piece work well enough that they can articulate the sounds so that they can be understood. How many of you have had the experience, I certainly did, where my son spoke and I knew exactly what he was saying because I was around him all the time. But if he spoke to a stranger, they were like, what'd he say? I don't understand what he said. And it was so frustrating for my son, and he didn't want to talk to strangers because they never understood him. Well, that's not a recipe for success for him. He's communicating, but people aren't understanding him. Now, do I want people to listen more closely and get to know him? Sure. But do I want to count on that? Because if he's in a fire, do I really want the guy with the helmet on to not understand what he's saying? No. We can work on the oral motor piece for him so that he can actually be a more effective speaker. And we do this all the time in theater. We do tongue twisters and things that actually work on the oral motor, strengthen the tongue, and they're fun. They're super duper fun exercises. When I'm with kids now, I just do tongue twisters and things like that with them to play with them. And everybody wants to participate because it's silly and it's ridiculous and it's fun. And if you fail, it's funny. If you say toy boat, toy boat, toy boat, then we all laugh. right? It's not, you didn't fail. It's not like, oh, the shame of it all. It's a great way to work on those kinds of things. It also helps to work on breath control so that I see a lot of kids on the spectrum and not on the spectrum. They'll be talking, and they forget to take a breath. And they're not using their diaphragms to be able to be heard. They're low talkers, right? You can't do that in theater. I mean, you can, but it's a great place to work on it so that you can have the right volume. Some kids talk too loud, some kids talk too low, and it can be aversive. And so we help for everybody to learn, okay, this is the volume that's most effective. What does that feel like? And you got to have enough breath. You know, I just recently was teaching a young person where their diaphragm was and how much louder they could speak if they were talking on their diaphragm. It's a big, long lesson. Maybe we'll talk about that sometime. But if your child is taking theater classes, they will teach that. That's a pretty, you know, everybody's going to teach that. So communicating clearly, and they don't even know that's what they're working on, by the way, because it's not boring. How about body language? This one was especially important to me, both for me and my son as I think about it, because when my son was diagnosed, he didn't gesture effectively. I mean, what a weird thing to say, right? But because he gestured, but he just didn't gesture effectively. Like, for instance, one of the tests to see if your child is on the spectrum that they're supposed to do, is it the CARS test? That one of the things on it is if they say, where is the light, that your child can point to the light. And my son didn't point, right? And he didn't really understand the point of pointing. But later on, when he was doing a play, you know, he played a character who pointed to everything. And all of a sudden he got it because he was thinking, like, why is he pointing? Oh, because he wants to show people that. And it clicked in his head. My son points as a result of that. You know what I'm saying? But it also, using body language, if you're playing somebody that has a different body construct than you quickly tire out because you go, oh, that's really tiring to like stand like that person or, you know, behave like that person. So it helps to work on those core muscles, right? If the character that you're playing is the stuffy butler and you have to stand like this for an hour, it's going to be really hard to do that if you don't have some core strength. And what we find is that some kids like can't do that in the beginning, but we rehearse, and they build core strength. They learn, again, the pointing and things like that to communicate through gesture. They learn how to control their body. That sometimes I want to sit down, but if I'm in the play and I'm playing the tin soldier, I'm not going to get to sit down for this period of time. I'm not going to get to slouch for that period of time. So I have to have enough control of my body to be able to do my job in this role. But they also learn to read body language. There's a fun theater game that I can remember even playing in graduate school at the National Theater Conservatory. But when I have kids at a certain, you got to have it a certain verbal understanding, not necessarily vocal ability, but verbal understanding. We play in the manner of, and where there's one person who gives the assignment and says, I want you to, whatever you're going to do, I want you to do it in the manner of this. It's an old theater game, parlor game, really. And so in the manner of somebody who's sleepy, for instance. So if I said, so you whisper that into one of the people's ear, you say, okay, so you're going to do it in the manner of somebody who's sleepy. And so they enter the room where everybody else is sitting, and they have to first do one activity. They get, and the audience gets to tell them which activity they want to do. So I want you to tie your shoes in the manner of the word. So if I got sleepy, I now have to tie my shoes like somebody who's sleepy, who's just really tired, right? And then the audience gets to guess what the word is. And, you know, frequently they get it wrong, and then they have to give them another action. Okay, now I want you to read a book in the manner of, and so the person picks up the book and is, you know, having a hard time focusing, right? And then they get one more, and at the end, if the audience if at any point somebody guesses, they get to be the next person who is the person who gets to do it in the manner of. And everybody wants to get it so that they can be the thing. But you know what it does? It's this really fun game that's sort of silly, but it's turn taking. It's listening to what other people have said. Because sometimes somebody says, oh, drowsy, right? And you go, oh, it's not drowsy. Oh, is it sleepy, right? So it's listening, it's collaborating as a team to be able to do it. But it's also learning about people's body language and reading it. It's super duper smart. I just love it. It's a fun, fun, fun game. Okay, how about confidence and self-esteem? One of the things that theater does is it helps build self-awareness. And I talked to so many people about this over the last couple of days who love theater and love the theater arts. And I said to all of them, tell me some words about how it helped you build self-esteem. And these are some of the things that they said, that they experienced the power of being able to overcome challenges so that they could count on themselves, that it made them feel capable, that they felt like they belonged, that in theater, you can fly your freak flag. Nobody cares. In fact, everybody loves it. So if you're different, there's like this incredible feeling of acceptance, that you come as you are. I don't know that sports really has gotten to that yet. I don't mean to speak ill of sports, but I don't know of anything else besides theater that is so accepting of you show up with who you are, what you have, and you're welcomed in. Which I super love about it. That we talk all the time about immediate praise. My goodness, when you do something and you get a laugh, and it's a laugh that they're laughing with you, whoo, that's some fun stuff, right? That's praise. And when you get applause, that's praise too. And that feeling of pride that you've been a part of something and that you showed yourself to be capable, you participated, and again. There's no, I know that the Oscars tries to do this and other awards shows try to be the best actor, right? But in a play, it's not that. I've been to so many plays where the leading actor did a great job, but somebody in the supporting cast blew everybody else out of the water. That we all just were like, my goodness, they were so talented and their performance was so great, right? So, but it's not like they won. It's not like, oh, they beat out the other person. It was just, oh, they were the person who shone today. So perfectly acceptable to do that, right? I think I have one more. No, I have no more slides. Okay, so I love the theater. I think that we talk a lot here about ABA and the power of ABA, and I'm always going to talk about the good quality ABA and what it can do for you. But I also am someone who believes very strongly that you, as I said the other day, you have to expose your kiddo to a wide variety of things, and you never know what the thing is that they're going to like. And that can be overwhelming. Many of you wrote and said, well, now I don't know what to do. Do I sign up for equine therapy, Shannon? Do I take them to swim with dolphins? Do I go to the musical petting zoo that you talked about? And I got to tell you that I think that one of the most effective, if you're not sure what to do a theater class. Do a theater class and be mindful about what your kiddo is into, and tell the theater teacher about that. And there are many, many, many places that specialize in doing theater classes and acting classes and improv classes with people who are on the autism spectrum. There are also places that specialize in doing that in a blended class where there are kids on the spectrum and kids that are not on the spectrum. And I think you got to think about which one is right for you. They're both valid, right? At different times, they might, and you might want to experience both, right? But I got to be honest with you. I really want you to prioritize ABA always, right? And getting the right amount of good ABA and be on top of that. But, and with that, if you're in the school system, you're probably getting speech and OT, which is great. Love those in conjunction with the ABA. Would never choose the speech or the OT over the ABA. But you really can have all of those in the United States. If you're struggling with figuring out how to get the funding for that, reach out to us. If you're struggling, we've heard a lot of you struggling with the fact that there aren't services being provided, call your insurance company and tell them, this is a benefit in my plan, why do I not have it, right? But they should be working hard for you to have that because it's there. There are problems, not denying that, but have those things. But if you want to do something that's enriching outside that and you just don't know where to start, and you don't see that if you see that your child is a painter, do painting class. I always say go to the arts first. Go to the arts first. But because it gives them a way to express themselves. But if you're not sure which art to go to, I always say go to theater, because they'll find there's a place for everybody in theater. They might find that they're the stage manager. They might find that they're the sound person. They might find that they're the lighting person, but start with improv so that they find a home and an ability to be able to play. You can put somebody who is nonverbal in an improv class if it's with somebody who's really good, and they'll have a blast. And they'll build all those skills that we were talking about. The musical petting zoo, Parker, I was talking about that the other day, that we used to take Jem to once a month in Pasadena. The orchestra takes each one of the instruments in the orchestra. They call it a musical petting zoo. And this is, of course, before COVID, but the children could line up to try the instrument, whether it was the viola or a saxophone, and they would wipe everything down in between, even before COVID. Now, I don't know in COVID what if you can wipe it down enough. But they got to try each one of the instruments, and let me tell you, it was some kind of fun. And my son loved it, and eventually played the trumpet because of us going and doing that. So, in any case, the theater. And if nothing else, if that's not available to you, there are always children's theater performances that tour, especially in the summer. Take your child to the live theater. It is different than the movies. Take your child to live theater. Do whatever you have to do. If you're in the New York City area, they have programs that are just for kids on the spectrum, where they'll assign a person to your child to have them help your child access the theater experience. So that's in New York City. We don't all live in New York City, but I'm telling you, wherever you are, there's something. Google it. Theater, children's theater in my area, have them go and be good audience. And if it's too much for them, then you take them out to the lobby and you come back in. But a lot of kids love the theater because they recognize that magic. There are people up there and they're telling a story, and you will see them focus in a way that you go, isn't that interesting? My kid who won't focus on anything will sit there for 40 minutes and watch a children's theater performance and not bat an eyelash. I'm telling you, it's magic. It's not all kids, but take them, and if they last for 5 minutes, great. Then the next time maybe they'll last for 6 minutes. And a lot of times these things are free. If it's not and it's wildly expensive, call the place and say, my child's on the spectrum. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to make it through the whole thing. Do you have, and you might find that they'll say to you, hey, if you can't make it past the first 5 minutes, we'll refund you the ticket price. Or we have a special program and we're going to be doing a performance on this day, and it's pay what you can, and you can come for as long as you can last. And if you can afford $1, then you pay $1. Good theater people are on the right side of this, and they want to have your child come to the theater. I know, it doesn't seem like it, but please, 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 please take your children to theater. All right, I love you all. We need to go, we're over time as usual, but I want to remind you, go watch Kobe Bird in the wonderful final season of Netflix's Lock and Key, and sign up to do some theater for yourself. If there isn't theater in your area, that's classes and things like that, look and see what your community theater is doing and get involved. Go with them, you be involved too, and say, I'll paint some sets, I want my child to be a part of this. You will make good friends, and so will they. It's a really worthwhile thing. All right, is it still available? Which things, Susie, is what, the musical petting zoo? I'm not sure if that's the thing you're asking about. I don't know if the Pasadena Symphony is yet doing, I'm gonna guess because of COVID that they're not. But I hope and live and pray that there's a time when things like that will come again, or they'll morph it into something else. Like it might be that they're doing the musical petting zoo, but they're not doing the woodwinds. You know what I'm saying? Any instrument you have to blow through. But they could do it with violins, right? If we just wipe down things afterwards. So, and reach out. You know, when we get motivated, if you hear that and you go, oh, I'd really like to do that, reach out to your local orchestra and say, have you guys ever thought about doing this? And see if, yeah, I see that you said it was the petting zoo. See if they'll do it. Because I don't know. I don't know if Pasadena invented it or they just picked it up from somebody else and some really awesome parent was like, hey, well, you live next to Pasadena, that's right. So reach out to them. And there used to be that printed booklet that they would make that would tell you all the things that were happening in LA. I don't see that anymore. Now it's mostly online, but it was the Pasadena Symphony. I think that's the name of it. Right at that there's the big theater where sometimes they film the auditions for American Idol in Pasadena. Do you know what I'm talking about? And that's where it was. And not only that, so 1 week a month they would have the petting zoo, but the other weeks they had artists come in and would do a performance where the kids would go upstairs above the theater, sit on the gym floor, and it was all these different cultural things that were amazing. And the kids, it would be interactive and the kids would get up and dance. And I'll tell you who else does this kind of stuff, your local library. Again, I don't know since COVID, but I would always ask my local library, can I have the schedule of events, your children's programming? They would have magicians, they would have, there was like crazy the amount of stuff programming that storytellers that would come in and do these live interactive theater things. And it's just kids sitting on the floor in a library room with amazing performers. That's theater. It doesn't all have to be on Broadway with the big lights and the big curtains. So anyway, look and see what's available near you. And if there isn't anything, ask the librarian, hey, have we ever thought about doing some children's programming? They might say we can't yet because of COVID, but let's hope and pray for a day in which we can. All right? Much love to you guys. We are replaying a Let's Talk Autism tomorrow from last week with Nancy, and then we're actually back live the next time. We'll also play Stories from the Spectrum on Friday. Monday is when we are back live with more programming, and I've got a big announcement for you guys on Monday that's super important. So make sure that you tune in for that. Thank you so much. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.